The continent is fractured into countless nations, all fighting for land in an endless age of bloodshed. That brutal era seems destined to continue for centuries, until the Nation of Flame decides it wants everything. Its armies sweep across the continent like an inferno, burning through one country after another and establishing a powerful empire in the north. But in the south, a tiny nation called Tiahe rises as the first spark of resistance. And on one particular battlefield, that rebellion is about to create a legend. While thousands of soldiers clash across the front lines, one man sits calmly on his horse in the middle of the chaos. He is the Tiahe army's centurion, a warrior feared across the continent as the Black Dragon. And judging by the grin on his face, he is having the time of his life. The Black Dragon points toward the battlefield, where his own soldiers are being overwhelmed by the enemy. Instead of looking concerned, he laughs and tells his daughter Sanka that everything is going exactly as he expected. Sanka can only sigh. Her father's battle tactics have always been more than a little unhinged. She reminds him that they are facing nearly 30,000 enemy soldiers and asks whether he really intends to go through with his plan. The Black Dragon simply grins. To him, an army of flame soldiers is basically an all-you-can-eat buffet. Then he charges. He dives straight into the enemy formation and begins cutting through their ranks as if they are barely even there. The Black Dragon laughs as he fights, openly mocking the soldiers for being far too weak to give him a proper battle. The elite units try to stop him, but it makes no difference. Soon, panic spreads through the Flame Army. Their top generals are being eliminated one by one, and the massive force that seemed unstoppable only moments ago is beginning to collapse. Then the Black Dragon descends from above like something that should not exist. He looks completely consumed by the battle. And he does not even need his blade. By sunset, the result is impossible to believe. With only 100 riders, the Black Dragon has decimated an army of 30,000. From that day forward, his name echoes across the continent as the Peerless Warrior. But he does not stop there. The Black Dragon leads his soldiers forward with unstoppable momentum, driving through the Flame Empire's forces and liberating nation after nation. A southern alliance forms around Tiahe, and the balance of power across the continent shifts almost overnight. Later that night, the exhausted soldiers gather around a campfire deep in the forest. The king of Tiahe praises the Black Dragon, saying that he fights like a god of war. But the king's expression soon becomes serious. The Flame Army still has 10 generals. Each one is a terrifying warrior with immense power, and the king wonders whether even the Black Dragon can handle them. He offers to share whatever information they have on these remaining threats. The Black Dragon slowly stands. Then he asks a simple question. Does the king really believe those 10 warriors are stronger than him? The king immediately starts sweating. It seems he has realized far too late that he may have just insulted the wrong man. Without another word, the Black Dragon walks toward a massive boulder at the edge of the camp. He clenches his fist. A gigantic dark red aura suddenly erupts from his body, illuminating the entire forest with overwhelming pressure. The king can only stare. The sheer power radiating from the warrior is so intense that it becomes difficult to believe he is even human. But the Black Dragon simply smirks. Fighting strong opponents is the only thing he truly wants. He declares that he will devour every last one of the Flame Empire's strongest warriors and remain at the peak of the world. Then he throws a single punch. The impact shatters the enormous boulder and sends a devastating shockwave. The king watches in terror, wondering whether the creature standing before him is even a human being. The Black Dragon is not merely a warrior who hunts enemy commanders. He is a force of nature. In an era of peace, a man like him would be nothing more than an object of pure terror. But in this age of endless war, there is no ally more reassuring to have than him. The soldiers already know what happens whenever their sharp-nosed captain makes a declaration. He means it. He does not merely want the enemy leaders defeated. He wants the entire army wiped out. And, strangely enough, nobody in the camp fears him. Senna looks on and agrees. The man who terrifies entire nations is the safest person they could possibly stand behind on a battlefield. The king of Tiahe can only sweat as he watches the warrior standing before him. To the king, the Black Dragon has become something beyond mortal. The Black Dragon finally tells everyone to stop talking. Words are useless on the battlefield. All they need to do is follow his back. Under the full moon, he promises to show them something no one has ever seen before. The king finally understands what kind of man he is dealing with. The Black Dragon is no ordinary human. He is a monster wearing human skin, fighting to save a continent being devoured by war. After that night, nothing can stand in his way. The Black Dragon eventually takes down the pride of the Flame Empire, its 10 generals, and every major obstacle standing between the Southern Alliance and victory. The Southern Alliance continues to grow as nation after nation joins them. Eventually, the evil dragon that has tormented the people is defeated, and the entire continent is finally unified under one banner. The king of Tiahehi declares that from that day forward, the continent will enter an eternal age of peace, free from the shadow of war. The news spreads everywhere. The dark age that had choked the continent for generations is finally over. People weep with relief, believing that peace will finally become their new reality. But while the entire city celebrates, the man responsible for winning the war already looks completely out of place in his own victory. Sina watches her father silently as the cheers echo through the city. The Black Dragon turns away. His heavy footsteps disappear into the distance. He already knows the truth. In an era of peace, there is no place for a man like him. 10 years pass. The world moves forward, but the legendary warrior remains trapped in the past. Deep inside the forest, beneath another full moon, the Black Dragon stares at the stars with an exhausted expression. He cannot stand it anymore. A world without war is painfully dull. For him, it is almost unbearable. Whenever he closes his eyes, all he sees are the battlefields. He has even considered starting another war himself just to feel something again. That is how desperate he has become. But he knows what starting another war would mean. Everything his daughter and his soldiers fought so hard to build would be destroyed. The thought of the people he loves is the only thing stopping him. So instead, he turns his frustration toward himself. Guardian Dragon, Peerless Warrior. Those glorious titles mean nothing to him anymore. He clutches his chest and admits that if this is all the life he has left, he would rather end it himself. Then a familiar voice cuts through the silence. Someone has found him. The Black Dragon turns around, his eyes widening as he senses a group approaching through the darkness. He is no longer alone. A unit of armed soldiers steps into the moonlight. At the front is someone he knows better than anyone. It is Sanka. She is older now, but her eyes are still just as sharp and determined. The Black Dragon is stunned to see her there. He asks what they are all doing in the middle of the forest at this hour. Sanka does not hesitate. She looks directly at him and tells him they have come for his life. Behind her, his former comrades slowly draw their swords. The sound of steel ringing through the quiet forest fills the air. The Black Dragon simply smirks. Perhaps the king has finally become afraid of the one man capable of breaking this fragile peace. A dark grin spreads across his face. After 10 years of boredom, this is exactly the kind of gift he has been waiting for. His old comrades begin mocking him, even laughing at the tears running down his face. One soldier sneers at the title of Peerless Warrior, claiming that outside the battlefield, he has become useless. They believe peace has made him weak enough to kill. The Black Dragon stares at them with almost unable to believe what he is seeing. Then Sanka steps forward. She declares that their final battle is about to begin. The soldiers prepare to kill the legendary warrior who once led them. Sanka leads the charge, her resolve as sharp as the blades in her hands. The Black Dragon's crimson eyes narrow as he watches her approach, and suddenly he understands. This is how his life was always meant to end, not peacefully, not surrounded by strangers, but against the people who knew him best. A satisfied smile returns to his face as his aura ignites around him. For the first time in 10 years, he welcomes the chance to burn his life away in battle. The forest erupts into chaos as the Peerless Warrior clashes with his own soldiers. To him, this is not betrayal, it is a gift. His comrades have chosen to remain with him even at the end, and their resolve becomes the final testament to the bond they shared. The Black Dragon fights with the same terrifying ferocity that once unified the entire continent. This is a funeral worthy of a warrior. And Sanka knows it. She watches her father and accepts that the battlefield is where he truly belongs. She vows to guide him to hell along a path they create themselves. Then she prepares the final blow. Sanka lunges forward with both blades, cutting through the moonlight. For the first time, the Black Dragon is pushed back. His daughter has finally become strong enough to match him. He calls out her name, and there is pride in his voice. The Black Dragon remembers Sanka as a little girl, looking up at him with innocent eyes. He remembers training her, even when she cried. He remembers the quiet moments they shared after the war ended. And he remembers standing beside her at the dawn of a new era, watching the world they fought for finally change. Now, standing against her blade, he realizes something. Sanka has finally surpassed him. He softly says her name as his lifeblood begins to spill. Then they embrace. A single ripple marks the end of his chaotic life. Then, suddenly, consciousness returns. The warrior is confused. He should be dead. A nurse smiles warmly and announces that it is time for milk. The legendary warrior has been reborn. His new name is Nero. And this time, he is a red-haired baby. The nurse holds baby Nero in her arms as he looks around with wide, surprised red eyes. Time passes. A maid holds a white dress against the young Nero, who remains perpetually stunned by everything happening around him. A few outside the mansion, a man practices magic, sparks of light shooting from the tip of his staff. 1 month later, the former Black Dragon is living a life that would have been impossible to imagine in her old one. The story now shifts to Colony 4, a bustling city that was once known as the Archimedes' Magic Kingdom. Standing on the roof of a massive mansion is a small red-haired girl named Nero Uldros. Nero still cannot believe what happened to her. The legendary peerless warrior, once feared across the entire continent, has been reincarnated as a little girl. She remembers the monks from her previous life preaching about reincarnation and the endless cycle of suffering. Back then, those teachings meant nothing to her. Now, she is living proof that reincarnation is real. Nero walks through the mansion's grand halls, still amused by the absurdity of her situation. Instead of being reborn into the body of some miserable pest, she has become the young lady of a wealthy family. To her, that kind of luck is almost enough to prove that divine justice was never real in the first place. And honestly, Nero has already accepted her new existence. She does not care much about becoming female, especially after remembering how peacefully satisfied she felt during her final moments as the Black Dragon. But there is one massive problem with her new life. The maids. The moment they find Nero, their eyes light up. They rush toward her like they have just discovered the world's cutest toy. Before Nero can even react, she is dressed in a frilly red outfit, while the maids excitedly plan what she should wear next. To them, Nero is not the legendary warrior who once conquered battlefields and united a continent. She is a tiny noble girl who exists to be dressed up like a living doll. And Nero absolutely hates it. Every new dress takes another piece of her warrior pride with it, while the maids continue praising how adorable she looks. So Nero finds another way to survive this strange new existence. Tea. And more importantly, donuts. The legendary conqueror of an entire continent has developed a serious weakness for sweets. World peace might be painfully boring compared to war, but at least it tastes good. Nero even starts suspecting that the tea and donuts must be enchanted somehow, because once she starts eating, stopping becomes almost impossible. The maids are completely obsessed with her. They hope she stays this sweet and adorable forever, especially because the rest of the old Rose family seems to be a nightmare. Nero hears every word. She may look like a harmless child, but behind those red eyes is a warrior who is quietly judging everyone around her. Then one of the maids mentions that Nero's birthday is next month. That means she will finally receive her record. Nero has no idea what that means. She soon learns that a record is a staff used by mages to channel magic. Even the soldiers training in the courtyard use them in combat. That immediately catches her interest. Nero heads toward the window and watches the soldiers practicing with their staffs. In this world, a person's worth is heavily tied to how well they can wield one. The next day, Nero walks through the gardens carrying a book, playing the role of the perfect little noble girl. Eventually, she sits down on a bench and sighs at how much effort the maids put into turning her into a doll. Her old warrior instincts start wondering what these people would think if they knew the truth. What would they do if they discovered that this innocent little girl was actually a lawless barbarian who once lived for war? The dragon is still alive inside those red eyes. While resting, Nero watches a mage fire an energy bolt. The whole magic system seems strange to her. Apparently, people cannot even properly use magic without one of those staffs. She returns to her book and continues trying to understand how this society works. In many ways, this civilization is far more advanced than the world she once knew. But beneath all the technology, magic, and beautiful architecture, the same ugly truth remains. The strong still prey on the weak. Beyond the white walls and beautiful gardens, people are still being beaten, broken, and crushed by those above them. The entire land is ruled by the great magical nation of Central, the dominant power that currently controls the region. The place Nero now lives in was once its own kingdom. But after losing a war against Central, it was renamed Colony 4. Its people were reduced to slaves. Anyone who dares to resist is treated like garbage, left begging for mercy, while the mages laugh at their suffering. Watching such one-sided cruelty should horrify Nero. Instead, it makes her feel strangely nostalgic. A tiny grin appears on her face. War, oppression, cruelty. No matter which world she enters, the story always seems to be the same. Then her quiet moment is interrupted. Her father, Cloud Old Rose, approaches her. Beside him is her older brother, Rox. The two carry themselves like the kind of nobles who believe the entire world exists beneath them. Nero immediately puts on her good girl act and tells them she has simply been studying the history of the country. Cloud points out the window. Outside, several resistance fighters are lying broken on the ground. He tells Nero that this is the lesson she needs to understand. This is what happens when inferior people attempt to defy their superiors. Rox proudly joins in, boasting about their status as honorary citizens and making it clear that they consider themselves far above ordinary people. In this society, anyone who is not near the top of the hierarchy is treated like a slave. Nero's family secured their position as rulers of Colony 4 through negotiations during the war. Now, they sit at the top while everyone beneath them struggles. Outside the mansion, a soldier presses his boot into the back of one of the rebels. The beaten man begs for mercy, but nobody cares. Even worse, the mages begin attacking the survivors simply for entertainment. To these people, the lives of the resistance fighters are worthless. Rox bursts into laughter, mocking the sounds of the rebels and comparing their cries to croaking frogs. Cloud laughs along with him, finding the very idea of liberation ridiculous. Neither of them realizes who they are standing in front of. Cloud finishes his lecture by reminding his children that Central is absolute and that the Old Rose name is everything. He expects complete obedience from both of them. Rox eagerly agrees. Nero simply gives a quiet response, maintaining her disguise as the obedient daughter. The family begins walking away. But Nero remains behind on the bench. Her thoughts are now stuck on one word: resistance. To everyone else, the resistance is nothing more than a collection of failures. But Nero knows exactly what resistance can become. In her previous life as the Black Dragon, she did not merely resist an empire. She tore one apart from the front lines. A dark smirk slowly appears on her face. For a warrior like Nero, those blood-soaked battlefields were the only places where life ever truly felt real. Their expressions turn pale. A bone-chilling wave of terror washes over them. Nero simply begins walking, as she keeps her terrifying presence hidden beneath her innocent appearance. 1 month passes. Nero's birthday finally arrives, but there is no cheerful celebration waiting for her. Instead, the mansion echoes with her father's furious shouting. In the center of the grand hall, Nero stands alone while holding a magic staff. Cloud, Rox, and Lady Old Rose stare at her as though she has committed some unforgivable crime. Their expressions are filled with shock and disgust. Nero simply tilts her head. She genuinely does not understand why everyone is reacting this way. Cloud is furious. He cannot comprehend how she can remain so calm after what has happened. Nero calmly asks why he is so angry. Compared to the armies and battlefields she once faced, his rage barely registers. She simply explains that she failed to activate the record. To Nero, it is just a fancy stick. But Cloud sees it very differently. Failing to activate the record means Nero has no magic at all. And in this society, having no magic is considered a disgrace beyond measure. Cloud tells her that without magic, she ranks even lower than a slave. In his eyes, Nero is no longer a proper member of the family. She is an embarrassment. Lady Old Rose and Rox react the same way. They are not worried about Nero. They are worried about what her existence will do to the family's reputation. Cloud makes the decision immediately. They will tell everyone that Nero died in a tragic accident. That way, the family can erase the embarrassment and protect its social standing. He looks down at Nero with cold eyes, already treating his own daughter as though she is dead. Lady Old Rose and Rox quickly agree. For them, faking Nero's death is the easiest way to protect the Old Rose name. Rox even volunteers to handle the accident himself. He mocks Nero as a worthless failure who has no right to live. Then he begins charging the stone. The attack is aimed directly at his little sister's face. Rox is fully prepared to kill her where she stands. But Nero does not look frightened. She does not even look like a victim. Instead, she calmly stares at her brother. There is something deeply unsettling in her expression. He has no idea what kind of mistake he has just made. Then, something enormous appears behind her. A gigantic red dragon manifests in the room, towering over everyone present. Rox freezes. His face turns pale as he finally realizes that the little girl standing in front of him is far beyond anything he expected. Nero casually asks whether his little joke is finished. Rox begins scrambling backward, desperately begging her to stay away. In a panic, he fires a burst of green magic from his broken situation, sending the energy straight toward her. Nero moves. Her feet blur across the floor as she slips underneath the attack with ease. Before Rox can even understand what happened, she is already in front of him. She catches him in midair and completely cuts off his escape. Then Nero drives him into the wooden floor with a bone-jarring impact. Cloud Old Rose and his wife can only stare in horror as the situation turns against them in an instant. Dust fills the room while Nero pins her brother down. Her fist rises. Rox desperately begs her to stop, his face already battered and bloodied. Nero simply smiles. She refuses. The red-haired girl begins striking him again and again, each punch landing with heavy impacts. Rox can barely make a sound. Nero mocks him for being nothing more than a fattened pig, ridiculing the pitiful attempts he makes to protect himself. Then a blue magical beam suddenly tears across the room, but Nero is already prepared. She grabs Rox's body and uses him as a shield, forcing the entire attack into him. Cloud stands firm with his staff raised, staring into the smoke as he searches for his son. Then, realization hits him. Nero is gone. Rox lies unconscious on the floor, blood running from his mouth. The boy is completely out cold. Now Cloud has to deal with the threat alone. He frantically looks around while the blue glow from his record spreads through the room. But he has already made a rookie mistake. He lowered his guard. Nero suddenly drops from above. She mocks him for allowing his attention to slip during what is supposed to be a fight to the death. Cloud manages to activate a defensive barrier at the last possible moment. Nero's eyes narrow as she studies the shimmering blue shield. She lands directly on top of the hexagonal magical grid. Around Cloud, a massive blue dome forms. This is supposed to be his ultimate defense. The barrier is a legendary power known for helping establish the dominance of mages during ancient wars. In the hands of a master, it is said to be powerful enough to deflect cannonballs. Cloud smirks behind it. To him, there is no way a magicless failure could possibly break through. Nero smiles back. The idea of an ultimate shield seems almost amusing to her. She takes one step forward. The supposedly impenetrable barrier shatters like glass. Cloud's face twists in disbelief as his greatest defense collapses beneath the fist of the child he had called incompetent. And this is when Nero remembers her previous life. In that world, magic was nothing more than a myth. There were no records, no magical staffs, and no mages. Instead, warriors mastered Senki, a physical energy circulated through the body to create superhuman abilities. Those warriors were known as warlords. They were living weapons capable of unleashing overwhelming destruction on the battlefield. And among them stood one warrior who rose above everyone else, a man who slaughtered countless enemies and became the peerless warrior. Cloud trembles behind his collapsing barrier. He is finally beginning to understand. The daughter he called worthless is anything but. Nero realizes that this new body may be incapable of projecting magic like a normal mage, but the flow of magic and Senki through the soul is remarkably similar. Even though she has been reborn into another body, she could never forget the power that defined her entire existence. She spent decades perfecting it. A lifetime of combat carved that strength directly into her soul. Then red aura erupts from her body. Nero punches straight through the remaining barrier. Fragments of blue energy fly in every direction as Cloud watches helplessly. Her fist closes in on his face. Lady Old Rose stands frozen with a hand over her mouth, unable to process what she is seeing. The man who ruled this family is being completely dismantled by the daughter they considered a failure. Nero lands and calmly walks toward her fallen father. The ground cracks beneath each step. A terrifying, blood-soaked grin spreads across her face as her red eyes burn with the excitement of the hunt. Cloud cannot understand how a powerful mage could have been defeated so completely by a magicless child. Nero gives him no time to recover. She launches herself into the air. Then her foot crashes directly into his face. The impact sends him flying as a massive crater forms in the floor. Cloud lets out a strangled cry while Nero continues attacking without hesitation. Lady Old Rose can only tremble as she watches the monster her daughter has become. Eventually, Nero stands over her unconscious father. Cloud is broken and helpless beneath her. She delivers one final heavy blow, leaving him sprawled on the floor. Lady Old Rose finally finds her voice. She screams at Nero to stop and threatens to call the guard mages. Her voice is filled with fear and desperation. Nero looks over her shoulder. She is completely unfazed. Lady Old Rose immediately hesitates. There is not even the slightest hint of fear in Nero's eyes. Nero calmly wipes the blood from her face before pointing out the problem her mother has overlooked. If the world discovers that the great Lord Uldros and his son were both defeated by a little girl, their family's reputation would be destroyed. And worse, their disgrace could lead to the entire family being demoted to slavery. Nero gives her mother a cold smile. She tells her to call the guards if she is really willing to risk losing everything. Lady Old Rose finally understands. She has been cornered by her own daughter. For someone as proud as her, slavery would be a fate even worse than death. Nero watches silently as her mother struggles with the choice, and for a moment, memories of her past life as the Black Dragon return. She remembers why she loved fighting to the death so much. Part of her wants to test herself against the powerful mages of this world, but she knows she cannot lose herself to that bloodlust again. The Black Dragon's life ended in solitude because war was the only thing he understood. Nero does not want to repeat that mistake. If she gives herself completely to that desire for violence now, she may never be able to face the people she once cared about. So she steps away from her father's fallen body. Her expression becomes cold and formal as she addresses her mother. Nero says she has one small favor to ask. 1 month later, the scene changes completely. A rowdy classroom is filled with rough-looking students. The boys lounge around their desks, carrying themselves more like street delinquents than scholars. The entire room feels tense, as though trouble could start at any moment. Then the heavy wooden door creaks open. Everyone turns. Nero steps inside wearing her new school uniform. The entire group bows together. They greet Nero as their boss. Nero can only smile at the absurdity of it all, wondering how she somehow managed to take over this place so quickly. In this world, magic is the ultimate measure of a person's worth, and most people are born with it. Society is divided into strict ranks from S to F based on how much mana a person possesses. A B rank is already enough to become an honorary noble, while those at the very bottom are treated almost like slaves. Mana usually reaches its peak around the age of 15, leaving very little room for growth after childhood. Because of that, children are sent to academies at the age of 12 so they can master their magic as early as possible. Those who reach B rank by graduation are promised a life of wealth and prestige. These honorary nobles receive a higher level of education designed to prepare them for leadership, while only the elite are granted access to the most advanced magical studies. Of course, none of this really applies to Nero. She cannot release even a single drop of mana. And that is exactly how she ends up at Drowa Magic Academy, a school built inside a repurposed prison for students society has already given up on. The halls are cold and damp, a far cry from the grand magical academies attended by the elite. Since the academy was founded, not a single student has managed to rise above the rank of a commoner. Drowa is basically a dumping ground for future slaves. And somehow, Nero finds the place strangely comforting. She walks down a dark corridor beside an arrogant, middle-aged man wearing a dark blue robe. He is one of Drowa's teachers, and judging by his expression, he is already irritated by how casually Nero carries herself. The teacher eventually stops, then, without warning, he reaches back and grabs the top of Nero's head. His face twists with malice as he calls her a useless brat and orders her to wipe that smug expression off her face. He explains that the students here are the worst of the worst. They are violent delinquents that even the teachers struggle to control. Instead of becoming frightened, Nero's red eyes glow with quiet anticipation. The teacher continues, telling her that the other students will love nothing more than targeting a noble who has already been branded a failure. Nero finds the idea hilarious. Being surrounded by the academy's most dangerous delinquents sounds much more interesting than sitting around a noble mansion. She politely asks the teacher to remove his dirty hand from her hair. Her voice sounds harmless. The threat hiding beneath it is anything but. Before the teacher can react, Nero reaches up and grabs his hand. The tiny girl tightens her grip. Panic immediately replaces his arrogance. Sweat pours down his face as he stares into Nero's cold eyes, finally realizing that the child he was just mocking is the one controlling the situation. Nero's tiny hand remains locked around his, proving exactly who has the upper hand inside this prison. The teacher collapses onto the stone floor, trembling. He stares at his hand in disbelief. There is not even a mark on him, yet the pressure he felt was overwhelming. Nero calmly extends a hand toward him and asks whether he is all right. She even gives him an innocent smile, teasing that he looks like he has just seen a ghost. The teacher can barely move. His face turns pale as the truth finally sinks in. This girl is dangerous. He scrambles back to his feet and practically runs down the corridor, desperate to put as much distance between himself and Nero as possible. Nero watches him leave, quietly satisfied. Her plan for Drowa seems to be working perfectly. Then the story returns to what happened 1 month earlier. After defeating her father and brother, Nero had stood in the middle of the blood-soaked mansion and calmly approached Lady Old Rose. Her mother was already terrified and barely holding herself together. She asked what Nero wanted from her. The request was surprisingly simple. Nero wanted to enroll in a magic academy immediately, and she wanted everything that had happened that day kept completely secret. Lady Old Rose tried to protest. Nero was far too young. The normal enrollment age was 12, but Nero had the perfect answer. Nobles could bypass trivial rules through their influence. Then Lady Old Rose discovered that Nero had specifically chosen Drowa Magic Academy, a place with no entrance exam. To her, a trash heap filled with delinquents sounded like the perfect place to begin her second life. Lady Old Rose could barely understand why anyone from the Old Rose family would willingly associate with such a place. But when she looked at her battered son lying on the floor, she realized she had no choice. She had already seen what happened to her husband. The fear of suffering the same fate finally broke whatever resistance she had left. Exhausted and trembling, Lady Old Rose asked whether this was truly all Nero wanted. Nero promised that once she was enrolled, she would never bother her pathetic family again. Now, back in the present, Nero happily walks through Drowa, enjoying her freedom from the suffocating Old Rose estate. Eventually, the terrified teacher stops in front of a heavy wooden door. They have arrived at her classroom. Nero peeks inside with a sweet, innocent smile. The classroom is packed with rough-looking teenagers lounging across their desks and staring directly at her. The room falls silent. Everyone notices the new student. Then one of the boys speaks up, wondering what such a tiny kid is doing in their classroom. Nero is not bothered in the slightest. Actually, she thinks a classroom full of thugs is wonderful. She walks straight to the front and stops. Then she gives them a polite bow. She introduces herself as Nero Old Rose and says she is looking forward to studying with them. The reaction is immediate. The name hits the room like a bomb. Every student is visibly stunned. A noble has entered their prison academy. The students immediately begin heckling her, demanding to know why a noble brat is wasting her time in a place like this. They tell her to go play house somewhere else. Nero barely pays attention. To her, this filthy academy already feels far more comfortable than the stiff noble estate she came from. Then she remembers what the teacher said. There is supposedly one particularly dangerous student here. Her eyes begin scanning the room. Most of the students are loud and obnoxious, but none of them seem particularly interesting. Then Nero notices him. A blonde boy sits quietly in the back, leaning against the wall. Unlike the others, he does not look excited or nervous. He simply stares back at her with a sharp, unfriendly gaze. A dark smile spreads across Nero's face. Maybe this is the person she has been looking for. Before she can find out, another student pulls out a knife. He calls her Shorty and threatens to carve up her face. Nero does not even flinch. Instead, she casually tells him that his eyes look completely lifeless and boring. That insult instantly pushes him over the edge. The student raises his hand to strike. He never gets the chance. Nero slaps him. The blow sends him spinning backward across the classroom before he crashes into the desks. Everyone freezes. The students stare in disbelief. Nero simply looks down at him and calls him pathetic. Then she turns toward the rest of the class. She tells them that they are all bark and no bite, which is exactly why everyone treats them like trash. That sets the entire room off. 3 students jump to their feet at once. They charge toward Nero together, with one of them leading with a blade. Nero smirks. This is exactly the kind of chaos she was hoping for. She moves like a blur. One kick sends a student flying straight into the blackboard. Another opponent goes down before he can even understand what happened. Nero steps over the fallen students and sighs. All that talking has turned out to be incredibly boring. She holds out her hand and tells them that she will have to teach them a lesson herself. The remaining students start sweating. The tiny girl they were laughing at only moments ago has completely taken control of the room. Then a boot suddenly slams onto a desk near the front. It belongs to Raisin. He stands over his classmates and angrily demands to know why they are afraid of a single child. One of the students tries warning him. There is something seriously wrong with Nero. Raisin does not even listen. He shuts the student up with a quick punch to the face. Then he turns toward Nero. He looks genuinely annoyed that his peaceful classroom has been disturbed. Golden energy begins gathering around him. His aura spreads across his body as he starts channeling magic. Nero's expression changes slightly. A C-rank mage in a dump like this. That is actually interesting. Ryzen's friends immediately begin bragging about him. They call him a genius who only ended up at Drowa because of his bad record. Nero looks away for a moment, processing that information. Then she turns back with a mocking grin. She calls him a big fish in a very small pond. That is the final straw. Ryzen's face turns bright red with anger. He cracks his knuckles and swears that he will crush her right there. He charges. Nero calmly looks around the classroom. There is just one problem. The room is far too cramped for a proper fight, so she does not bother using the door. She simply smashes straight through the window. The entire class stares in disbelief. Their new classmate has just thrown herself out of a high-rise building. Nero falls gracefully through the air. Then she looks back toward the students and challenges them to follow her outside if they have the courage. Ryzen and his lackeys rush toward the broken window. They stare down in complete shock and confusion. Nero lands perfectly in the courtyard below without even breaking a sweat. She looks up. Then she beckons them with a mocking gesture. She is clearly enjoying every second of the attention. Up at the window, the students are left wondering what kind of monster they have allowed into their school. Ryzen grips the edge of the window, trembling with rage as he swears he will kill Nero for making a fool of him. Nero is surrounded by the students, and one by one, they pull out their records. The magical devices immediately transform into their staffs as the students prepare to attack. Ryzen looks at Nero and makes it clear that they will not hold back. All of them are coming at her together. Nero simply smiles. To someone like her, cowardice has no place on a battlefield. Ryzen immediately starts wondering what she could possibly be planning. Behind him, the other students begin whispering. They cannot understand how Nero could have jumped from such a height earlier without a record. One of them wonders whether the little girl does not have one at all. Another quickly rejects the idea. There is no way she could have made that jump without a record. Someone else assumes she must simply be hiding it somewhere. Nero hears their conversation and understands why they came to that conclusion. To them, a record is the culmination of the very best magitech science. In the past, magic required a medium and the complicated process of manually forming magical formulas. Because of that, powerful spells took time to activate. But the records completely changed the common sense of magic. By registering magical formulas in advance, mages could activate spells faster, from farther away, and unleash much more powerful magic than before. This revolution in magical technology gave Central overwhelming military strength. Its power eventually surpassed the other nations, allowing Central to become the supreme ruler of the continent. Nero acknowledges that introducing such a powerful weapon was impressive. But in the end, a weapon is only as powerful as the person wielding it. She looks at the students and tells them that while they may enjoy playing around with their little toys, she is going to teach them about reality. Then Nero notices something strange. Nobody is moving. The entire group is just standing there with their staffs. She wonders what happened. Ryzen finally responds. He repeats Nero's words about teaching them reality, then challenges her to actually do it. He activates his magic. The other students follow immediately, activating their records as well. Ryzen declares that they will show Nero the unreasonable reality of this world. Then he unleashes his spell. Magic arrows shoot toward Nero. Every student fires at the same time, filling the area with a barrage of magical projectiles. Nero remains completely calm. Compared to the battlefields of her past life, where tens of thousands of arrows could rain down at once, this attack is nothing more than a flashy display. There are simply too many openings. Every attack is far too easy for her to avoid. Nero stands only a few feet away from Ryzen and the others, yet none of them can even touch her. The students stare in disbelief. For Nero, the situation brings back memories of the old days. Then she smiles. Now, it is time to start the war. Before Ryzen can react, Nero suddenly appears behind one of the students standing near him. She punches him and calmly points out that he is too slow to make a decision. Ryzen is shocked. Nero explains that when the enemy is stronger than you, the least you can do is make your decision quickly. Seeing Nero standing directly behind him, Ryzen immediately shouts for everyone to scatter. The students separate in different directions, but they are still too slow. Nero quickly catches up to one of them. The terrified student asks why she picked him. Nero simply answers that he was the slowest. She grabs him by the shirt and throws him hard onto the ground. Another student shouts for everyone to fire. The rest of the group surrounds Nero and unleashes another barrage of magic arrows. Nero watches them and points out how pointless it is for everyone to attack the exact same spot. Even a monkey would use its head a little more. She simply walks away from the incoming attacks. Then she explains that in situations like this, the students should spread their aim out instead of focusing every attack on one point. Once again, Nero avoids every spell with almost no effort. She casually continues teaching them how actual fighting works. Making an attack difficult to dodge is not enough. A real fighter needs to make things unpleasant for the opponent as well. Raizan can only stare. He has no idea what is wrong with this girl. Nero suddenly launches herself forward. One by one, the members of Raizan's group are thrown aside. Raizan looks around in disbelief as his friends are beaten down right in front of him. Some of the students become so terrified that they start running away from the little girl. One of them desperately runs toward Raizan. He screams for help. But Nero is already right behind him. She laughs and reminds him that the way out of a deadly situation is always forward. Anyone who turns their back on the enemy and runs will not survive on a battlefield. The fleeing student becomes even more frightened. He quickly tells Raizan to move forward and block Nero's attack. Raizan reacts and puts himself between them. He manages to save the fleeing student. Then he turns toward him and asks whether he is all right. But Raizan's barrier is already beginning to crack. The magical defense is barely holding together. Raizan suddenly sees Nero's attack coming. He shouts. A huge explosion erupts. The blast fills the area and sends Raizan and the fleeing student flying away. For a moment, Raizan becomes relieved. He believes the attack landed directly. A point-blank direct hit. Surely Nero has finally been stopped. Then she appears right in front of him. Raizan freezes. Nero calmly asks what that was supposed to accomplish. He cannot believe she is still standing. Nero reminds him that, just as promised, she is going to teach them about unreasonable reality. Raizan is shaken. He asks what she actually wants to teach them. Then his anger finally boils over. He calls Nero a traitor who sold out their country. He tells her that because of people like her, they have been forced to endure this miserable life. Nero listens before asking him a simple question. Why does he not fight against Central? Raizan is stunned. Nero tells him that if he has complaints, then he should rebel. If he really wants to protect his family and friends, then he should be willing to risk his life and fight for them. But if he cannot even do that, then he is ultimately no different from livestock that is satisfied simply because it is being fed. Raizan has no immediate answer. Nero decides that they can continue that conversation another time. For now, they need to settle the situation in front of them. She raises her hand and tells the students to put some spirit into it and keep going. The battle continues. Then the next day arrives. The classroom looks completely different. The same group of rough students now stands together, bowing toward Nero. They greet her with the same title. "Good morning, boss." Nero smiles and returns the greeting. Then she looks around at her new classmates. With everything settled for now, Nero decides that it is finally time to enjoy her school life. At Drowa Magic Academy, Raizan sits alone on the roof, still thinking about Nero's words from their fight. She told him that if he wanted to protect his family and friends, he needed to risk his life and fight against Central. The memory makes his blood boil. Raizan clenches his fists and shouts at the little girl, asking how she could say something like that. But before he can continue, someone approaches him from behind. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, Nero explains that it has been 3 days since she transferred to Drowa Magic Academy. After her first encounter with the class, she gave her classmates a little educational instruction to make sure everyone understood where they stood, or at least, that is what she thought she had accomplished. Now, several of the girls are gathered around Nero, touching her hair and admiring her appearance. One of them praises how ridiculously glossy the boss's hair is. Another points out that Nero is a noble and marvels at how smooth her skin is. Nero looks at them in disbelief. She reminds them that she is the same person who beat all of them into submission. The girls simply dismiss that. According to them, that is beside the point. Cute and pretty things are always right. One of them then casually mentions that plenty of children have no idea what is happening in their society because slaves do not even have basic human rights in this country. Before Nero can respond, the classroom door suddenly slams open. One of the students rushes inside and announces that there is a major problem. Raizan is being attacked by upperclassmen on the roof. Nero immediately smiles. She tells the student to explain everything. At the same time, the situation on the roof is already getting serious. Raisin is surrounded by 3 upperclassmen. He raises a magical barrier and blocks their attack, complaining that they waited until his back was turned before jumping him. One of the upperclassmen mocks him. They have heard that Raisin was recently beaten by a transfer student, and now they want to settle an old score. They demand that he lower his barrier and surrender. Raisin looks at the 3 older students with contempt. He points out that they are third years ganging up on him because they cannot defeat him alone. To him, the situation is pathetic. The upperclassman responds that they do not care how many people they need. They can call themselves pathetic if they want, as long as they get the chance to beat Raisin down. Raisin suddenly grows quiet, because deep down he realizes something. The truly pathetic person here is him, not because 3 people are attacking him, but because he allowed himself to be beaten down by a group of weaker people in the first place. He thinks back on his entire life and realizes that this feeling has always been there. He has always believed himself to be pathetic. Then his memories take him back to his childhood. In the colonies, nobles are tested for mana at the age of 5, while commoners are tested at 10. The results determine which magic academy they will be allowed to attend. 4 years earlier, Raisin received his first magic evaluation. The instructor was stunned by the amount of mana inside him. He immediately praised Raisin's talent and said that even the recommendations required for prestigious magic academies were well within his reach. Raisin's family was overjoyed. His younger sister was happy for him as well. Back then, Raisin truly believed he was special. He possessed as much mana as a noble, and everyone praised him for it. His parents were proud. His little sister was proud. Raisin himself was just a clueless child who had no understanding of how cruel the world could be. Then, 2 years later, everything changed. During another magic evaluation, his younger sister was tested. The examiner's expression immediately changed. She did not appear to possess any mana. In other words, she was considered talentless. Raisin's family was shocked. In their society, the fate of someone without talent was already decided. They would be denied even the opportunity to develop their mana at an academy. Instead, they would be dragged into slavery without exception. They would be used for other people's entertainment and pushed to the very bottom of the caste system, where they were not even treated like human beings. At the time, Raisin believed none of this had anything to do with him. He had talent, so naturally he assumed his little sister would have talent too. But she did not. His sister cried and called out to her big brother. Raisin immediately tried to reassure her. He promised that everything would be okay. He would protect her. But before he could do anything, his parents stopped him. Raisin looked at them in confusion. He asked why they were stopping him. Then he saw the expressions on their faces. They were telling him something without speaking. And Raisin hated it. He begged them to stop looking at him that way. His sister was his family. He was her big brother. He had to protect her. But his sister eventually smiled through her tears. She apologized to him and told him that he would definitely grow up to become an incredible mage. Then she was taken away. As she disappeared, she gave him one final request. She asked him to forget about her. And that was the last time Raisin ever saw his little sister Rin. Back in the present, Raisin remembers the moment with disgust. Not disgust toward Rin, disgust toward himself, and toward everyone around him. He had been praised as talented, yet when the moment came for him to reach out his hand, he had let his sister be taken away. After that, Raisin rejected the recommendation to attend a prestigious academy. Instead, he deliberately crashed his own future and ended up at one of the lowest-ranked schools, Drowa Magic Academy. This was where his life had led him. Raisin realizes that perhaps everything could have been different. Maybe his life would not have become such a miserable existence if he had simply reached out his hand to his little sister back then. His hope begins to disappear. He stands on the roof, trapped between the 3 upperclassmen and the weight of his own regrets. Then, a voice suddenly cuts through the moment. Someone tells him not to give up. Raisin looks up. Nero is standing there. The same little girl who challenged him only a few days ago is now looking down at him. She reminds him of the lesson she already taught him. The way out of a deadly situation is always forward.